In recent decades, we've drifted almost without realizing it from having a market economy to becoming market societies. The difference is this: a market economy is a tool, a valuable and effective tool for organizing productive activity. But a market society is a place where everything is up for sale. It's a way of life in which market values and market relations reach into every sphere of life, from personal relations to health, education, civic life, politics. And so the book is really saying that we need to have a debate about where markets serve the public good and where they don't belong. It doesn't see the world as divided between market economy on the one hand and government on the other. Those are not the only alternatives. A market economy is a valuable tool for organizing productive activity. And market economies have brought prosperity and affluence to countries around the world. So the question is not, for me, whether to have market economies. Of course, we should have them. The question is, what is the proper role and place of market values and market relations? Because what's been happening in the last few decades is that market thinking, market values, and market logic have begun to reach beyond the domain of material goods and have reached into personal life, family life, health, education, civic life, politics, in ways that we almost don't recognize at the moment. And yet the effect is that sometimes in these domains, outside the domain of material goods, markets have the effect of crowding out. Market values can have the effect of crowding out or corrupting non-market values worth caring about. That's my gut. With material goods, the buying and the selling doesn't change the value of the thing being bought and sold. So, for example, if you sell me a flat-screen television or give me one as a gift, it'll be the same good. The television will work just as well either way. But the same may not be true with non-material goods. Take a simple example: friendship. Suppose you wanted more friends.
I do. I do.
It wouldn't occur to you, or maybe it would, to buy a few. Now, why not? Because you would immediately recognize that buying friendship doesn't really work. A bought friend, a hired friend, is not the same as a real one. It's an interesting philosophical question why this is true, but somehow the money that would buy the friend changes the meaning of friendship. It dissolves the values and the relationship that makes us want to have friends in the first place. Well, this is televisions on the one hand and friends on the other. These are clear cases. But many of the areas that markets have invaded in recent decades are somewhere in between televisions and friends. Markets can buy many of these goods. Market incentives can get people to do various things. But it's a further question whether important values are being driven out. When we, for example, offer financial incentives to young students to read books or to get good grades, when we offer people bribes to look after their health, to quit smoking or to lose weight, should we have a market in kidneys for transplantation? What about surrogate motherhood or paid pregnancy? It's banned in most of Europe, but in India they permit it in hopes of creating a new industry, a new source of employment for Indian women. So in each of these areas, we have to ask, if we introduce market values and market mechanisms, is there the danger of corrupting or crowding out certain non-market goods, intrinsic values worth caring about? We shy away from engaging in moral and political argument that raises hard ethical questions. We're reluctant to do it. And I think one of the reasons we're reluctant it's just the reason that you mentioned it, together with the fact that we know people in pluralist societies like ours disagree about values, about how to value goods, whether pregnancy or childbearing or sex or the human body or education or health or civic life. We have disagreements about these questions. Now, part of the appeal of market reasoning is that turning these questions over to market mechanisms seems to spare us the need to do the hard work of reasoning together and debating these questions in public life.
And let me jump into that, because it's a problem that interests me a lot. And I found this idea very extremely interesting when you say outsourcing moral judgment. And I remember this quote from T.S. Eliot, who was actually at Harvard as you are. He criticized those who dream of systems so perfect that no one will need to be good.
Uh-huh.
And it seems that we have now chosen the market with the illusion that we don't have to think about choices anymore, and that as if we were exonerated from the adventure, because it's actually an adventure of judging and deciding. Is that the case? What do you think about that?
Yes, and I like your term adventure, the adventure of judging and debating and deciding. What I'm trying to do with this book and in general with my work is to try to encourage and inspire and provoke democratic citizens to engage in this adventure. The adventure of reasoning together, sometimes arguing and disagreeing together in public about hard ethical questions, including questions about justice, the common good, what it means to be a citizen. These are questions that don't really figure very centrally in our public discourse. And I think this is one of the reasons there's such widespread frustration with the terms of public discourse. I have found around the world, well, two things. First, in almost every democratic society today, there is great frustration about just the condition you described. Deep and bitter partisanship, relatively little reasoning together and listening to one another, addressing big issues. Well, but I see this in many places.
I know.
And so there's, on the one hand, frustration with this condition. But at the same time, especially among the younger generation, and there's a lot of universities around the world, there is a great hunger for something better, for a kind of public discourse that engages with big questions, including ethical questions of justice and rights, equality and inequality, the role of markets. There's a great hunger for this because no one finds inspiring the kind of public discourse that predominates today. It's narrowly managerial and technocratic on the one hand, and then shouting matches partisanship on the other. No one is inspired by that. And so I find the democratic citizens want something better. And there's hope in that. And part of what my goals in writing this book, but also in putting my justice course online, my Harvard course, free open access, is to try to encourage this habit of thinking, of reasoning, of arguing together about big ethical questions in public.